What subtle signs indicate a man doesn't truly love the woman he's with? He never asks follow-up questions when she tells him about her day. Just nods and changes the subject back to himself within 30 seconds. This is a big one. When you like someone and value their presence in your life, you show curiosity about them and what they are sharing with you. When you don't like someone, you might ask the polite questions and sometimes even answer in an attempt to not seem rude, but you don't ask any follow-up questions or really listen to their response. It took me too long to recognize that he simply doesn't like me when I finally allowed myself to notice that he had zero issues with being curious and friendly with everyone else and seemingly forgot how to be that way with me. I don't know that it was didn't like so much as didn't care, but it took me a long time to recognize it in my marriage. One time I went away on a trip with our child, and I decided I wasn't going to say anything about it unless he specifically asked about it. Before this, I would just offer up the details of my day, weekend, event, what have you during the course of conversation, but at a certain point, I realized he never actually asked about anything I did or was interested in. Guess how long it was before he asked me anything about my weekend trip? 4 days. 4 days. Not even a how did things go when we got home. Just launched into details of what we missed while we were gone and never bothered to ask about the reason we were gone. He doesn't like talking about her and feels forced to when people ask about her. I get together with some friends, and someone asked one of our guy friends where his wife was that day. He said in this sarcastic tone, something like, whatever bullshit she gets up to, and everyone just went dead silent. It was so contemptuous, and yet it was clear he had gotten used to talking and thinking about her like that. He said he was super surprised when she left him. No one else was, when he never initiates physical affection that isn't sexual. Like no random hugs from behind, no hand-holding just because, no forehead kiss when she's sad. I've had this conversation with so many dudes who insist they are in a dead bedroom relationship. And in like 30 seconds it becomes clear he hasn't hugged her or held her hand or just been physically kind to her without trying to put his dick in her. So she's just started recoiling from his touch because he's treating her like a masturbatory aid instead of a partner. My ex was constantly hanging on me for sex, talking about sex, trying to initiate while I was asleep. There was no way I could exist around him without it turning into some way to get his penis wet. Let me tell you, that happens enough times. You'll recoil like a vampire in daylight when you see hands coming too close when you just got comfortable. It's the most self-defeating behavior. And then they get mad when you aren't magically horny exactly when they are. Like, fuck off, I'm doing the dishes. Yeah, spending hours making dinner, cleaning up from dinner, putting kids to bed while he plays video games. And as soon as I sat down to relax, he wanted to have sex. Like, maybe if you helped me just a little bit, I wouldn't resent you so much right now. This whole thing with men trying to have sex while women are sleeping is so completely bonkers. If someone woke me up for sex while I was blissfully asleep and I had to work the next day, I'd never sleep next to that person again. Why are women putting up with this? A room of one's own is what's still needed. I've been through that myself, and it sucks because I love casual affection, need it even. But my partner only understood sex, so anytime he touched me, it was off-putting because, that's about a half-hour commitment. You'll either have to drop everything to fulfill or be guilted about if you say no because he's gonna pout the rest of the night. This 100% happened to me. We still had sex once a week. Not bad after 12 years, IMO, but he rarely showed me affection. And any time I showed him affection, he instantly tried to quickly escalate it to sex. I explicitly told him, I need us to have affection that doesn't turn into sex. He refused. So I stopped being affectionate unless I was already horny. He said we had a dead bedroom, so what was he supposed to do? He had to try to get sex whenever he could because I was depriving him so much. And he couldn't be affectionate towards me because I had wounded his ego by turning him down for sex so often. I even explained to him how affection that didn't quickly ramp up would likely put me in the mood, and he still wouldn't do it. I'm now with a genuinely affectionate man who does not feel entitled to sex, and the difference is astonishing. I feel actually respected and valued as a person. I swear every relationship I've had with a man has been like this. Even the very feminist ones. My ex was like this. He always just said he couldn't help it, but he couldn't give me a massage for more than 2 minutes before trying to initiate, and wouldn't understand why I'd get so frustrated. I get it, but damn, can't you touch me without trying to touch a boob or something sexual? I could give him a massage for hours without touching sexually and still be really turned on. It wasn't just massages, but walking past it was always grabbing my ass or boobs, never my shoulder or hip or something. My best friend married quite young, and when she was graduating college, her husband said he wasn't going to the ceremony because it was stupid. I didn't like him before, but I really didn't like him after that. Oof, yeah, I got married before college too, and stayed home to raise the kids. When I was finally transferring from community college to a university, I came home and saw that he had opened my acceptance letter. A few months later, I found the confetti from the packet in the junk drawer. When I told him I passed a super tough exam, he just asked if I wanted a cookie and then walked away. After my divorce, I went for my master's degree, and it turned out to be a way better experience. Good for you. My mother did go to nursing school, but got married in her last year to a man, my father, who was extremely anti-intellectual and saw no need for a higher education, and never got one. He went into the Marines instead. Dad always had a way of mocking me whenever I accomplished anything in school. I got accepted to one of the first free public state-supported boarding schools in the United States, and he said he would have to see if I could go. Then he found out that they would feed me for free, and then was all for it. Back to my mom, though. She was whip smart, and if she had been born a little later, or in a slightly different place, she would have gone to medical school instead of nursing school. But she was a damn good nurse and loved her job, so I don't want to belittle that. She was the one who graduated valedictorian of her class, was president of her local professional organization, was the trainer who would be trained first and then show her peers how to perform a new technique. She worked in surgery. When she was about 60, she needed to renew her nursing license. I was visiting my parents, and she brought up the fact that she needed to start studying for it, and my dad just sneered and asked her in a very condescending tone why she needed to do that she should retire or get a job where she could spend more time at home, meaning to do more taking care of him. Even when working full-time and on call, she would have to do all the housework, cook all the meals from scratch, etc. Man, I wanted to deck him. But my mother, the look on her face changed, and she smiled and she said, "Maybe Dad is right." I knew she loved her job and wanted to stay in it. She talked about it a lot, but she always put her husband above her own needs and desires. I think this is largely because she, like my dad and the rest of my family, were and are self-described fundamentalist Christians. Old school, white evangelicals in the rural South who were brought up on the Schofield Reference King James Version of the Bible. And almost all of the women in our church were like my mom. They were almost all smarter and more accomplished than their husbands. I have never been around so many women who married down but looked up to their husbands to guide their lives. I still don't get it and never will. I want to riot for your mom, and I want to have a chat with your dad. A life dimmed all because some men ain't shit. Thank you. I appreciate that. Dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 69, and Mom took exceptionally good care of him for the 11 years he had it before he died, peacefully and surrounded by those he loved, as his obituary put it. I really think if he had cared more about his education and had gotten some physical exercise in his 40s and 50s, he could have avoided, at least a little, some of that long decline. Mom, unfortunately, is showing early signs of cognitive decline at 87, but she has a very supportive family and lots of friends watching out after her. And she can still live independently, thank goodness. Often when I visit, she will go on and on about what a great man Dad was, how kind and gentle and smart he was. And this was a man who was physically abusive to me. At long last, I have decided to keep my mouth shut around her because, being in her late 80s and with cognitive decline, she is not going to change her mind about him. But I feel like I need to tell someone what I have witnessed, and I appreciate you listening. Thanks again, it means a lot. Stupid because it wasn't his accomplishment, I'd say. Deeply insecure behavior. My ex had a way of sucking the joy out of any pleasurable experience. He could not be happy for me if I had a win. It got to the point that I would not tell him when something good happened. He often found out anyway. A friend might say, "It's so great that your wife got that promotion," and then he'd be angry I didn't tell him. I started to avoid fun things and activities, and stopped enjoying things I used to like. It was a bleak existence. After we split, I had to force myself to do fun things. It took about 2 years for me to naturally do things I liked to do and regain interest in engaging in activities I enjoyed. Lesson learned. If someone doesn't like seeing me happy and doesn't want to share happiness, I don't want them as a friend or romantic partner. This is where I am now. Was with him for over a decade, married, left him January of 2025, and it's been so hard to convince myself to do things I used to love. I never stopped loving those things. I just avoided them because I was tired of things I loved being ruined. And now it's been so hard for me to unlearn that. Same, 4 years ago, and it's still striking me as odd to be proud of myself or actually hear anyone else when they tell me I did a good job. It's disgusting what some people can do to mentally manipulate others. I'd give anything to be who I was before I ever met that guy. Quite the literal daily struggle to not downplay even minor wins for myself. Having to hide your own happiness from the person closest to you is such a heartbreaking way to live. The right people don't compete with your joy, they add to it. Whoa, I feel this one big time. Company I worked for previously paid a vacation for all employees to go watch a playoff game, hockey, in Seattle, and stay at a hotel. I didn't even bother believing that would fly, and I was so far down the rabbit hole, I already convinced myself not to care about missing it anymore, and considered it just something that wasn't for me. I wish I had known this sooner when I was younger, because then I would have never considered dating the person I was with. He could not stand. I was in college and working towards something he could never have. He made sure to make me feel bad about it and tell me I would never amount to my dreams. I don't know why I believed him. He still brags about materialistic things because that is all he has, and he doesn't even do it ethically. It's a whole bunch of not good activities, and his wife has to be the one helping him out. That is literally all he wanted me for, to use me. I realized later in life that my life would have been miserable and I would not have amounted to anything. This is hilarious to me. Previously, I had always made more money and had a higher position than my wife, but over the past 5 years, she surpassed me in title, compensation, and received a pretty big equity payout. Sure, I'm happy for her, but I'm also pretty happy for myself. I now have zero stress about losing my job, knowing that she can provide for the family. That's what I don't get if you're married. How fragile is your ego that that's more important than knowing you're legally entitled to half of their success? As an adjunct to this, I notice when the guy teases constantly. A little is okay, but to never be serious or take anything she says seriously seems like the worst form of disrespect, because they won't own up to it. It's just joking. Right, you're so sensitive. My total disrespect was just a joke. You're no fun. I'm so sorry, and I totally get it. I also loved how my ex got upset and hurt when I would calmly tell him that something he did was hurtful and to please not joke like that. And it was unfair for me to attack him and speak up about how his actions were disrespectful. One day I said, "It's gotten to the point where you're making me choose between this relationship and my self-respect. I'm done." That was an evil thing to say. I found out a few months later that he had a whole other relationship during the last month of the relationship. I guess focusing on my dad in hospice wasn't allowing me to give him the attention he needed. I see now just how selfish I was. Don't forget to update us with the happy news of the divorce when it happens, will ya? One of my husband's big green flags is if I start talking down on myself, he'll say, "Don't you talk about my gorgeous, brilliant, hilarious wife like that." It makes me smile every time and breaks that internal negging I'm doing to myself. I try to do this with my wife as often as possible. She has a lot of negative self-talk, and I will not stand for her disrespecting my best friend like that. It's usually a completely different story when you start doing the exact same thing to them. I'm just kidding. Can't you take a joke? Nope. And then they say, but it's different. I don't do it like that. Sam, it's also very hard to recognize when you're actually in that relationship. I've only ever dated 2 men in my life. Of them, one was a relentless tease who never failed to make me laugh with his stupid bullshit, and whom I'm friends with to this day. And the second was a remorseless asshole who kept trying to put me down at every turn, and then acted like he was just kidding. Why are you so sensitive? A large part of why I stayed in that relationship for as long as I did, entirely too long, was because I confused the second man's way of speaking as being the same as the first's, and couldn't understand why the first made me giggle like a schoolgirl and the second made me feel like shit. The first one can morph in the second one at any time. Happened with my ex-wife. She was always teasing, and over the years I took it and played with it. It was great. And the last 2Y of our 12Y marriage, I was having a though time and needed support, and the mask fell and she could not stop her teasing, which turned into bullying, verbal, emotional, mental abuse. Would not stop despite me being vulnerable and telling her I can't handle it right now and I needed support. Now, in order to detect which one is what, I will return the teasing back to them. If they react badly to be teased back, then I have my answer and steer clear of them. This was similar to my experience too. 14 years married. It was all fun and laughter until it wasn't. And then I realized that the laughter was shifting to always be at my expense. And then it didn't stop when I asked for it to stop. It was so incredibly difficult to watch something that used to feel fun and light turn into something that I didn't recognize, that made me feel horrible about myself. I'm sorry that we went through that. I read an article written by a couples therapist a few months ago that said hearing contempt in a person's voice when they spoke to their partner was the one tell that the relationship would end in divorce. Couples could work through almost anything unless there was contempt present. The Gottmans are the pioneers of this research. It's fascinating to read their work based on all of the marriage research they've done. Contempt is their #1 indicator of a relationship failing. My daughter's best friend's parents are getting divorced, but they are 8 years old, and I thought maybe she was exaggerating or misunderstanding at first. Then the little girl said, "I can tell from the way my dad talks to my mom that he hates her now," and I about wanted to cry for her. Better that they're splitting up now instead of deciding to competitively hate each other for the rest of their lives until one of them dies and the other gets crowned the winner. That's what my parents decided to do, and it strongly affected what kind of life and what kind of man I wanted to have. I chose a man who is nothing like my dad, who I lost respect for at a very young age, probably around 8-10 years old. And we have a relationship that my mother is jealous of to the point of making fun of us because we like to hold hands. Their 50th wedding anniversary is this month. My dad can't understand why nobody wants to come to the party he wants to have for it. I'm an occupational therapist in the hospital setting. I teach people to return to taking care of themselves so they can go home after a prolonged hospitalization. The amount of 40-plus-year-old men who have the physical ability to put their own socks on or wipe their own ass and simply refuse to relearn it as a skill because that's what a wife is for is really something. Their wives wiped their behind even when they weren't hospitalized. For some of them, yes. For others, they lost the ability over the course of hospitalization due to the severity of an injury illness, and once they're recovered, are just okay with having someone do it for them and simply don't care to bother relearning it as a skill even though they're capable of it. This is 100% true. And some I worked with, I fear enjoyed being taken care of like that. It was awful, yes, and all the men who need help to hold their penis in the urinal, but suddenly can do it when you're like, okay, I'll get the male CNA to help you. I'm a nurse on a med-surg floor. I'm also a guy. I'm so goddamn good at making those creepy perverts feel bad. My coworkers know that I'm willing to help with them as well. It isn't unusual for fully independent mid-30s men to ask, "Can you send in one of the young girls to help me with my shower?" I just shoot back, "Nope, but I'll help you," and all of a sudden they can do it on their own. I think I prefer dealing with violent detoxers over creepy fucking losers, and that is saying a lot. making the lives of everyone around you better, one fetid limp penis at a time. You are an inspiration. And no, there is definitely not a S marker on this comment. I'm also a nurse on a med-surg floor, and I entered a room with multiple tough guys with huge personalities and snide comments, patient included. I had to check a lower abdominal surgical dressing and drain when the patient stated, "Don't get too excited when you see that big thing down there." And without hesitation, I snapped back with very little enthusiasm, but lots of sarcasm. "Yay, I've seen bigger," replaced the blanket and turned and walked out. I stood at the door and all the tough guy visitors couldn't stop laughing. Patient never made any more comments like that. Yes! I got to a point also I refused to wash them too. I would tell them, "You can use your knife and fork just fine. You can hold and wash your own business." Yes! Worked as a nurse in nursing/rehab homes for years, and some geriatric psych, but that's a whole different ballgame. I used to have old men ask me to help them get firmed up before catheter insertion. Or when changing and cleaning them for a new brief, would use their hand and rub all over their crotch, asking me to really get in there and get them clean. Oh, look at that. You did the movement needed to clean that area. Slaps washcloth in their hand. Have a go at it then. I've witnessed so much verbal contempt between a couple I'm friends with. Sometimes I just want to interject and ask if they recognize it. I can't imagine true happiness in that type of relationship. I know one like this that tries to pass it off as joking, but there's a tone and inability to let the joke go that gives it away. I've actually never seen them be genuinely nice to each other either. It's incredibly odd to me that they're even together. I just completely do not get it, and they're slated to get engaged soon. Yes, and it's so hard to convey to other people how bad it is, turning away a bid for connection. The relationship suffers death by 1,000 paper cuts. I'm constantly asking my husband if he wants to watch a show or a movie with me during the week, and I have yet to hear a yes. I say, "Can I give you a hug?" and get a "your call," and I get so flustered and confused and dejected. To me, anything that's not a yes is a no. But to him, hugging him despite him acting like a stodgy mannequin is what's more valuable. I hate it. This one hits home for sure. As time has gone on, I've realized how emotionally unavailable I used to be to my girlfriend. She had this deck of cards with sort of deep conversation prompts for couples on them. Things like, what is one thing we could both do better in our relationship? Stuff like that. She'd suggest we do a few on longer car rides, and I would moan and groan. Tired, not in the mood, don't want to get into all that deep stuff. All of the classic avoidant excuses. I realize now that she was seeking connection, and I was downright rejecting it. I feel awful in hindsight, but I've gotten better at recognizing the importance of those things, and I'll even initiate things like that now. I feel like you are a rare example of a person realizing they had a massive flaw in their approach to a relationship and amending it within the same relationship. More often, you see people only have these epiphanies once their partner has given up on the relationship, often after the partner had repeatedly asked for change and made bids for connection. It is only in the losing of the relationship that the flawed partner understands the damage they were doing, and they then take these learnings to the next relationship and are able to be much improved partners. I hope you're able to communicate that to him as plainly and clearly as you have here. And he's receptive. It's hard, but you deserve to ask for what you want in the relationship. Literally my entire relationship. I've introduced him to shows I like, or books I read, or even to see this funny meme I shared and have usually gotten, "I'm busy, this isn't for me, I am already watching something, I can't see every meme you send," etc. And I've just stopped sharing things I enjoy. I'm realizing how less of my likes, dislikes, and personality I share with him now, and it's slowly drifting us apart. I was briefly seeing a guy, and I happen to have a couple Lego sets I haven't put together yet. When I brought up building a set together, he told me he wasn't very good at Lego. I told him that he doesn't need to be good, it's just a fun pastime. He told me that he's just not into it. Immediately killed that idea. The kicker was that we were on our way to an activity that he enjoys, but I'm not a huge fan of. Thankfully, we only went out for a few weeks. If this, or some variation of this, just about sums up my entire relationship, Sadly, I love meeting people who met my husband before they met me. Damn near every time I hear about how much he loves me, or how they're excited to meet me because they've heard such great things. It always gives me such an ego boost. I met a guy like this the other day. My kid is going to a new school, and he was there to see his kids during lunch break. He was the only one that came up to me, interested in why I was there, and then proceeded to tell about his wife, who's a teacher there. I'm looking forward to meet her. If I combine everything he told me about her, she's a genius and a saint. Love that for them. My partner texted one of his friends, "Why buy the cow when you can have the milk for free?" He told me that's just how guys talk, and that I was oversensitive. That was years ago. Here we are, 9 years later, and still not married. I am getting ready to leave. Take the signs exactly for what they are. Good for you. Hardest parts are over. It'll sunny skies from here in comparison. My best friend bitches about his wife constantly with me. I've straight up asked him why not just divorce. He says he's just venting, then asks me why I never complain about my wife. Like, dude, my wife is awesome. Yeah, we disagree from time to time. But she literally keeps the house running, takes care of scheduling so my ADHD brain can just get shit done. Yeah, I witnessed one of those conversations a couple weeks ago. One guy found out the other guy had a wife and said, cool, they could bitch about their wives, and the other guy was like, my wife's great. More interestingly, they don't speak about him ever. Sometimes saying nothing at all says a lot. My husband works from home. Sometimes I hear him through his office door bragging about me to his coworkers. He doesn't know I can hear him, and it always makes me smile. I was on the receiving end of this as a guy. Hell of a confidence killer. How he acts when she gets sick or has a bad day. If it's treated as an inconvenience to his routine, rather than a moment to step up and care for her, the love isn't there. I knew my then boyfriend, now husband, was a keeper when I got sick while visiting him, and he made me soup and a tray of mini cinnamon rolls to cheer me up. I nearly cried, it made me so happy. Same, I got sick one time when visiting my fiancé, and he asked what I needed to feel better, and all I could think of was a fruit salad to get some vitamins in me. He went to 3 to 4 different stores in different towns until he found a store that had one in stock. I was expecting him to go to one store, notice they didn't have any, and come back. He was so apologetic at it taking so long for him to find one. I was initially so happy to have my partner with me when I was very sick with the flu. Sick to the point it took real effort to change the position I was laying in, or to eat anything. He helped me to get to the doctor and went in with me when I asked. But then after like 2 days I was not eating much, very weak, and I knew that the thing that would be easiest to eat and give me most energy was that one soup. All he had to do is go buy the frozen soup, some extra potatoes, and make it according to my instruction. He's able to cook more complicated things if he wants. But that day he didn't feel like going to the store and making it for me. He'd rather continue playing his video games in headphones in the other room. I was very sad, weak, and hungry. I'm glad he eventually left me. My partner shows no compassion. I had a miscarriage, and during it, I was in pain. He said okay, and that was all. He ignored me basically the whole time. Found out a couple days later that while I was having this miscarriage, he was scrolling on Tinder same time as our son's first birthday. I pray that you exit this horrific relationship unharmed and wiser. My empathy to you and prayers for blessed living. Distancing, very standoffish. Communication shuts off. Seems annoyed in your presence. When he starts getting annoyed with you. Not the roll eye stop being silly way, but the ugly stop embarrassing me way. Rolling his eyes at me when I'd make a joke was where it started, TBF. That was the subtle red flag. That soon turned into looks of disgust and leaving me alone at parties. That was the blatant red flag. Damn it, why did I put up with such crap treatment? Leaning away from her. I watched a couple I know go from leaning towards each other to him gradually leaning away while she was still leaning towards. I saw it, I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't articulate it. When she decided to divorce him, I wasn't surprised. One I've seen a couple times, in a group social setting, he participates in the socializing as an individual rather than a couple. This may sound odd, like we're all individuals, right? But if you're in a group and you feel like you're standing just outside the circle while your partner is in the circle smiling and laughing, that's a bad sign. If you love someone, you bring them with you, even if it's just in the conversation. Even if they don't say a word, you still make them feel like they're in the circle rather than like they're waiting for you to finish having fun. If you love someone, you notice their discomfort. You pick up on it and you support them through it. If you don't even notice they're outside the social circle, though, that's not how partners behave. Hate that this paragraph made me realize some things. Thank you, stranger. The first time I met my BF's family, about 9 of them, we went to lunch in a bakery afterward. Everyone was filling into these 2 couches that were facing each other in the bakery. We were the last to get to the couches, and I went to sit on the end. My BF nudged me gently to take the inside seat while he sat on the end. I asked if he was sure and said he could sit closer to his family, and he just gave me a really warm smile and said he can take the end. He wanted to make me feel included, and it was such a small thing that was so sweet and memorable. Made me feel so loved when he walks ahead of her and never looks back to see where she is. I notice this when walking around town, airport, sporting events, etc. Sometimes the woman is huffing, catches the red light, and is left behind, and her partner then looks irritated. She looks stressed and embarrassed. I'm like, girl. And then there's couples that walk together. Even worse when kids get added to the equation. Mom is falling behind, wrangling the kids and all the stuff while dad walks ahead unencumbered. There's clips of a mime at SeaWorld, ERC, that will stop dad, grab the diaper bag and/or kid from mom, and make a point of handing them to dad with a very disapproving look. In front of a now laughing crowd. It's rather satisfying. My dad does this shit. All my life, just wandering away, off in the distance. Now me, my mom, and my sister just let him do it. We take our time and walk together, and he can be alone if he wants to be. Many of my memories with my dad are of the back of his head from 20 feet away,